Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Marketing Crew. The last few weeks, we've been talking about sales promotion because the sales platform, the sales environment is changing rapidly, or there's a perception it's changing rapidly because of the cost of living crisis, etc. We've been talking about sales promotion. But what I wanted to do today is to get everybody talking and discussing the subject of sales. Now, some people don't like me when I like it when you mention sales. I love the sales environment. I don't mind people selling to me as long as they're doing it in a respectful and a helpful manner. And sometimes I smile, sometimes if it's not in a respectful manner, I'll cut it short and put them in the place. And I get a lot of that on LinkedIn where people just don't know. They're into sales before they've got to know anybody. And I think Alex is here, which is good.
God, I used to look like that once.
Yeah, right. So what I'd like to do first off is, in fact, get a straw poll and ask the question, how comfortable do we feel about sales, about the sales process? You know, when we're talking to somebody who's expressed an interest, how comfortable do we feel and how confident do we feel? Welcome, Alex. In fact, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you that question.
Maybe you can't hear us. Yeah.
Yes, you can. Your mic, the mic's off. I'll come back to Alex. Tracy, how about you?
Hate it.
Sorry?
Hate it.
You hate it. All right.
Well, maybe that's a bit strong, but it's not my kind of most enjoyable bit of it all.
How does it make you feel?
I don't like selling because I've always been in service of, so the whole sales bit to me just is something I've still got to kind of tackle, really.
More to do with service. Okay, I'll come back to that. Anne-Marie.
I don't mind it. I think I used to hate it, but I think because I kind of know what I'm doing now, I feel quite comfortable selling what I'm doing.
Right. What was the switch? Was the first, when you said you weren't comfortable with it, now you are? Was it because you weren't comfortable that you knew what you were doing, or that your product or service was saleable or of value? What was it?
No, it was obviously when I work for corporates, and although you might be passionate, you're not necessarily as engaged as you are when it's your own company. And so I let the fears kind of be there, if that makes sense. But now, because it's my own company, and if I don't sell it, no one will, I have kind of gone, well, I've got to overcome that. So I have, and now I don't mind it so much.
All right, good. What about you, Rod? I know the answer, but go on.
No, I'm very comfortable talking about, my product, my service, and what I do. And I think you've got to be yourself, and that always helps because it comes across not salesy, if you like. And the worst thing about in sales is people that come across salesy. I was talking to someone yesterday from the Devon and Plymouth Chamber, and the woman knocked me back because she was so knowledgeable about the whole subject, and the information I gained from her in sort of 10 minutes was incredible. And yet she was selling, although she was informative, helpful, and knowledgeable. And I think if we can all be informative, helpful, knowledgeable, then it sells itself, really.
Well, I'm not sure about selling itself. We might want to revisit that comment later on, and I think what you just said there is very valid. Into being yourself, but you still need to persuade, or do you? What about you, Ollie? Do you think you need to persuade? How do you feel about sales?
Yeah, generally I'm pretty confident with the sales process. I quite enjoy it. I kind of get that a certain buzz about it, I think, about whether you're going to win that job or not. So yeah, generally on the whole, I would say I'm pretty comfortable with the sales process. I think the pricing bit is the bit where sometimes I feel a little uneasy. It's just to sometimes I find it hard to gauge with certain clients where they are in terms of on the kind of budget pricing scale, and I always find that's probably the bit where I don't lack confidence in, but there's just a bit more kind of nervousness around that kind of area.
When you say you're uneasy about the pricing, is it that you're uneasy about pricing your own value, or is it uneasy that they'll be able to afford it?
Yeah, probably the latter, I would say. So I think
They
there's
can
often,
afford it.
yeah, kind of whether it's within their expectations. I think with particularly websites, there's such a wide range of prices from people, you know, doing them for a couple £100 up to thousands. And I think for me, yeah, I come with clients, their expectations can be very different from one client to another on price. So yeah, it's not, I don't have any issues about my own value and making sure I charge enough for that. It's just kind of, yeah, with the prospective client, not kind of scaring them or shocking them. Not that my prices are scary or shocking, but I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. Yeah, I think just it's a natural kind of unease, I think, about talking about the money side, I think.
I think many people are sensitive about money issues. It's quite a psychological, complex thing. What about you, Jason?
Well, yeah, as you know, Paul, I mean, the last few years I've kind of been more involved in an actual sales environment, and I've got more. I'm completely comfortable with the idea of it. I know that previously, because I got quite, I consider a fairly logical mind, and I've always been very confident at presenting and telling someone about what I've got. And at the end of it, it was very much, if you can't see the value in this, then I'll go. And what I've realized, I started to appreciate, certainly in the role of, I mean, now and over the last couple of years, is understanding more about the emotional side of it and the requirements. Because obviously there's very few of us have got something that isn't available elsewhere in other forms. And I appreciate that with the sales side of stuff, it's not just about the thing and the problem that it solves, but it's also about everything, you know, the emotional aspects of it. So that's where I'm working on, but I'm more aware of it now, which is, I think it helps us the first step, whereas previously it was very much, you know, you've told me what your problem is, there's a solution to it. If you can't see the fact that that's going to solve that problem, then good luck, you know, next.
Right, that's interesting. Alex, nice to see you back. I haven't seen you for quite a while, but I know that you had a big project on that had a finite end. Is that ended now?
Which one?
It was working with some entrepreneur. Was it?
Oh, Julian Richer with a Good Business Charter. Yeah, that was a 6-month contract just to generate them more members. Yeah, that's kind of finishing.
Did it do all right?
Yeah, all good.
Good. So sales, how comfortable are you? How confident are you in that sales environment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to call it sales. I like to call it relationship building. And yeah, often that's what I tell clients in terms of LinkedIn, social selling. It's just about building relationships, being genuine and honest with people. And yeah, Jason was pretty black and white, you know, explained the process quite simply. I guess for me, it's knowing when to stop and not persist. It's understanding, yeah, there's not a fit here. Right, it's time to move on and not waste any more time. I think I can get, the problem with me, I can get fixated on the goal or the prize and not realise necessarily if it's right for them or try to see those objections and just trying to work out ways of getting around those objections for the client. But sometimes it's just blatantly not a good fit and it's going to cost you in the long run. So it's seeing that, I think, and discerning that, and then, you know, moving on and on with the next. It's a numbers game.
Knowing when to stop. I just flashed through my mind. I once went to see a hairdresser. I'd left the hairdressing business, but this is another. I can't remember what it was, in fact, but I went to see this hairdresser, and I was told he was out to lunch, and eventually he came back, and I went up to see him, and I realized that while I got to the presentation stage, and while I was presenting, I suddenly looked up. I think I was looking at something. I looked up because I heard this snoring, and he'd fallen asleep. And I felt so bad about it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to suddenly raise my voice to wake him up, that I decided to creep out. And I said to the receptionist, he's having a nap. He says, well, he does have a drink at lunchtime. So he had a drink problem, which relieved me of the feeling that I'd bored him to death. So that's when to check out, when they fall asleep. In putting some structure to this together, sorry, Anne-Marie.
Sorry to interrupt, but please may I ask Alex 2 questions?
Yes.
Firstly, could you tell me what you do, please? Because if we've met, I'm very sorry, I've forgotten. And secondly, what's the squiggly thing after Smith? Because that's confusing me.
That's all right. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to take the show here, Paul, but yeah, my name's Alex. So I run several businesses. I've got a printing company, which in terms of sales, the sales process is very different. You promote a product on Amazon, on eBay, the money comes in the bank, the goods go out the door, and there's no relationship with the client. That's it. It just ends there. So in terms of sales for that business model, that's very different. I've also got a digital marketing business as well, very much B2B. And then I've got a LinkedIn lead generation software, a SaaS tool, basically software subscription, and that's Leadeth. So that basically automates the process of connecting with people on LinkedIn, building relationships on autopilot, basically. So that's the kind of main things that I'm involved with. I'm also an investor of a board game, a traditional board game. So lots.
Do you want to invest in my board game?
Have you got one? Have you?
I have, and I desperately need to get it to market.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, isn't that a fortuitous interruption?
We got our Good Life game into Hamleys and John Lewis at Christmas last year. So it's all about the licensing. That's where the money is with board games, very much. So the squiggle at the end is just to remind me to be intentional in my conversations, because I'm a Christian. So it's that's why I wake up in the morning. That's what gives me purpose. So I thought, let's put that on there as a reminder, and it does work. And thank you for the opportunity. Great to meet you all.
Great. Beg your pardon about Alex. It was we started somewhat late, and I skipped out because normally visitors I introduce. I know you've been on a couple of occasions, and I'd forgotten that a lot of people might have joined us since. But Anne-Marie's now very excited about a board game. You know what to do. Follow up. In putting this together, bearing in mind that I've been in sales since I was 20 years old. And I found one of the biggest challenge when you've got somebody who's a natural salesman. I'm not saying I'm a natural salesman, but when you've got somebody that is clearly good in that sales process, trying to put it down into a process, trying to construct what it is that makes them successful and other people that struggle. I thought I'd do some homework, and I've got some notes here that could be quite interesting, and certainly to help Tracy's comment about she's not feeling comfortable with sales. She's been more into service. I came across a very good article, which I was happy to send you links to these. And I, by the way, you can have all my notes, but please take notes anyway. And this was a guy, can't remember the name of him, Donald Kelly. The biggest misconception people have about working in sales is that they have to convince people to do something. Instead, think about sales like this. Someone has a problem, you have a solution that's in their best interest. Great sellers aren't trying to manipulate someone into buying something, but rather they're asking effective questions and probing deeper and deeper until they figure out how to help a buyer solve a problem. And I think that when you've got that as a shift point, and that's why we start with mindset, if you can shift from the fact that you are not trying to convince, you're not responsible for their reaction, you're only responsible for serving them. And given that Tracy mentioned the word service, The question is, am I in a position to serve this person, to take them from where they are now to where they want to be? And am I able to do it in a way that will add value to them? And it really is as simple as that. And I think the trouble is we get really messed up with sales because we come across such bad sales. You know, I'm about to say something and I don't wish to offend Rod, but you know, the barker on the market that's selling plates or tea towels or whatever, and he's yelling out in a way. If you break that down, it's a very good technique. But if you're not in the market for those things, you feel you're being sold at. You go around the Ideal Home exhibition, or somebody used to knock on the door and try and pitch something. They're into trying to sell you something before they know whether, before they qualify you, before they decide whether that's appropriate or not. I think also when Ollie mentioned about price, although I have a lot of experience in sales, lifetime, I found that I was very easy selling somebody else's product that has a price. I sell products at all sorts of prices, but I do find it difficult deciding and selling my services at a price. I have a big issue with that, a real big issue. Need somebody else to help me with that. So I've got a few notes here. Rules of sales. Your job, and it's following on from what I've just said from Kelly, your job is to help your prospect make the best decision for them. You see, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about us. It's about them. That's another major shift, because ego can take over. The feeling that you've, I don't think Ollie mentioned, you know, you're wrestling with the, no, it wasn't Ollie that mentioned it. You're wrestling with the situation. You want to achieve that sales. Maybe you need to achieve that sales to pay the mortgage or whatever. You've got all sorts of issues yourself. And of course, you know what you offer, so you can talk about your product and you talk about your service, but it's not about you. It's about them. And I think that's the other shift that's it's very important. Two other points that came out. What is best for them is almost always outside of their comfort zone. Whether that's comfort about price, whether that's comfort about change, it's almost always out of their comfort zone. And your prospect will fight like hell to stay inside their comfort zone. I suppose that's why you get objections. Objections are not a no. They're a, right now, I'm not convinced, or I've got, consider an objection as a genuine question. You've got to find out whether it's a genuine question. Yes, Jason.
Just what you said about being outside the comfort zone, I guess that's by definition why they haven't solved it already.
Correct. Correct.
So they're waiting for something to help them take.
Well, as we said previously, and this is why I try and illustrate it simply, you've got somebody there that you're talking to, and to qualify them as being able to use your services or whether you can serve them, you've got to know, first of all, what they want to achieve. Now, that could be in terms of ego. It could be in terms of ease. Why do we buy certain things? Why did I upgrade to the next drone up? Why has Rod just ordered wardrobes and cabinets? So in other words, what are their needs? Why do we buy anything? Because if we haven't got a need, or we haven't got a fear, I love the way the tail at a certain times crosses over. I'm sure that's on a stick. If you haven't got that need, then you haven't got a sale. So that's the bit we don't tend to qualify. So where are they? Where do they want to go? They may be aware of that, or we need to make them aware they could be doing things easier, better, cheaper, whatever. And what is it that's been stopping them? And that's the key bit we don't get to do. And once you've got that, your job is to take them by the hand, overcome that objection, and achieve that sale. So that's their comfort zone, I suppose. And the barrier to that will be depending on how many other people they've been talking to, how many other people have been pitching. We talk about qualifying people. They're qualifying you. That's an interesting one, which I'll come to shortly. So the challenge is that to truly help people, you must master the art of navigating them through the things they don't want to do so that they can have the things they want to have. Put another way, where are they? Where have you both decided they want to get to? And what's been stopping them so far? If you get those three things right, and a lot of salesmen don't do that. Most salespeople don't do that. You're not up against much. They've never thought of it that way. That's why you get pitched on LinkedIn and people telling you how they can help you without knowing anything about you. And that's what irritates. So two reasons people buy: they're compelled to a better future in some area of their life, and the other reason is they're being stuck. Being stuck is more costly than moving forward. And they have to believe that you're the person to take them there. That's the other bit that doesn't get talked about in techniques or sales techniques or the sales process. They have to believe, they have to have absolute confidence that you're the very person to take them there. Anne-Marie.
That's really interesting, because that's kind of my whole business, is that process. And I would say 50% of the people that I work with are outside their comfort zone. So I spend 50% of my time getting people from outside their comfort zone into their comfort zone, and reassuring them that they can do it and it is possible, and so on and so on. And the first conversation I have with anyone is always, where are you? Where do you want to be? And then let's see how we can get there. So it's really interesting you say that, because I've inadvertently been doing it right.
You say, where are you? Where do you want to get to? The other question is, instead of saying, let me show you how to get there, what stopped you? Because then they're going to reveal their fears. They're going to reveal their awkwardness. They're going to reveal, hopefully, if you probe on that, what's stopping you. That's part of the qualification. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you do that anyway, but I was going to say,
to be fair, most people, it's just, I don't know how to move it forwards, or it's outside my comfort zone, or I can't do it, or, it's the kind of the sort of normal. I don't think anyone has actually said, I've never thought that I can't afford it. I don't think anyone's ever mentioned money at that point, which is really interesting.
No, I wasn't thinking it was about money. I think that middle bit is, the more you can probe in a nice way, the better. With questions like why, etc. And you've got to do it with the right tonality, but it actually shows, first of all, it does two things. It does two things, not first of all, it does two things. First of all, it shows you are genuinely interested. I mean, there's two skill sets that any good salesperson must have. And frankly, with the people I know on here, you've got that. The first one is empathy. Your ability to consider the other person and put yourself in their shoes. And the other one, and I think I've realized I have both of these, is curiosity. Because you'll notice on these calls, I'm always curious about why somebody says that or why they did that. It's quite interesting. So empathy and curiosity, and don't be frightened to use both of the empathies are done, but the curiosity gets down to questions. When I started in sales, I was so nervous I didn't want to ask questions. Now I'm far more relaxed, and questions are absolute answers, because your competitors are not doing any of that. Generally, they're not asking questions. They're too busy on the sales pitch. Rod, you had a point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just sort of drives me back to when I left the army and joined the Crew, and we had some guys come and talk to us about sales, and their simple analogy was that sales is the art of making buying easier, and then to follow that up to help us through the sales process, they introduced what I still use to this day, which is a fact find. So ensuring that you do find out exactly what the person is looking for and how you can join them on their journey to achieve the goal, which is what they want. And if you can do that and gather the confidence that you can help them with that, then you will have achieved what everybody wants to achieve, which is the sale.
You just mentioned something, the fact finding. I know you have a fact finding sheet. That's just doing what I'm saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, where are you now? What are the circumstances? What's happened?
Getting the whole picture.
You know, what do you want from this funeral? You know, how do you envisage it? How do you see it? What experience you've had? Don't ask the question of what's been stopping you.
Oh.
So I thought that I have to say that you have to believe this, that you have to believe that they have to believe that you're the person to take them there. Remember, the two reasons people buy: compelled to a better future in some area of their life, and being stuck is more costly than moving forward. And that one hasn't always been apparent with me. The cost of not doing something. You know, what's the alternative? So somebody's thinking about a basement, or they're thinking of remodeling or reselling for whatever reason they might want a basement or not want a basement. What's the cost of not doing it? That's an interesting one. I don't know whether that ever comes up, Jason. You had a point.
It's just a recent distinction around selling, and there's no relevant place to share it, but there's potentially what you're selling can be grouped into one of three areas. And if you think about the difference between selling vitamins, selling sweets, or selling painkillers, the motivation behind each of those is very, very different. And obviously, if someone you've got a broken leg, or my analogy, if someone's hair's on fire, it's actually quite easy to sell them a bucket of water to put the fire out.
Yeah.
But when you buy vitamins, the psychology behind paying money for vitamins is not the same as buying a bar of chocolate, and it's not the same as buying a migraine tablet. And depending on what you're selling and who it's to and why, that could steer the journey.
Well, it's interesting you should mention those three things, because you could add on crack cocaine, heroin, drugs, or of any description. It's still back to what I've just said. Somebody's in a situation now where they feel unhealthy, and so the vitamin is there you can't just sell it as a pill. You've got to sell the effects of what they'll have when they're getting all the nutrition they should be getting. Why are they not getting it? What stopped them, etc. Same with a pill, a headache tablet. Somebody's got a headache. Where they want to get to is free of a headache or free of a migraine or whatever. And I suppose sweet, that's a pleasure thing. You know, it's if you were to really analyze it, if you put a bag of Werther's toffees, you're imagining yourself as a youngster and the smooth taste of those, or a chewy caramel or a mint or whatever. You want a mint because do you want it because it tastes nice, because it's refreshing? Is it just a habit, or is it something to keep your breath fresh? I don't know. So there is a before and an after, and it's knowing that the item itself is not what you're selling, it's the after. Alex, you've got some experience in sales. What's your take on it? Any advice you would give the group?
Yeah, just if you want to improve your own processes and things, I highly recommend Don Miller's book, Building a Story Brand. That's a really good book. It's a 7-step framework, and it's how they make all the big movies that hit the box office. It's a proven formula that works. If you take out one of those steps, the movie is a flop. And basically, there's a guide, you're the guide, and you address how you solve people's problems, and you look at objections, and very much looking at the kind of empathy and how you've got the authority to guide them through this process, and then you call them to action with a simple clarity, and it just works really well.
Yeah. What was that, Don Miller or Dan Miller?
Don Miller. It's an American author, but there's loads of free resources online and stuff if you look at it. But yeah, the book gives you access to something called Story Brand, which is I found it really useful to start mapping out.
Yeah, I'm a fan of his idea, and that's been through that on a couple of projects. Really good.
Yeah,
I've got a feeling I've listened to several of his podcasts. He's got a podcast, hasn't he?
Yes, yeah, very much
it's
so.
like a franchise now. You can be a story brand consultant.
That's right. Yeah, if you've got 10 grand.
Yeah. Is it 10 grand, right?
Yeah.
That's something, being bagatelle. Well, that's interesting. We've covered the power of stories on other occasions, and they are so important in getting people to actually see or understand themselves being in that position. It's very often you can take somebody over the reasons they're not doing something from through a story. You can actually cover the cost of not doing anything, probably called an opportunity cost. I used to use that a lot with BNI because there's only one person per category. It's all very well, you can work out the cost of being a member. What's the cost of your competitor starting to get the business that you should be getting? You know, there is a cost to that. It's not as easy always for them to see. Right. There's some of the thoughts about what the sales is. Very often natural salespeople, they do things intuitively, but if you're trying to measure their effectiveness, or you're trying to teach this, you've got to know what process they go through. So there has to be what is the process? And this is quite interesting if you're looking at your sales performance. And I heard something the other day, you are not responsible. You might be trying to influence, or you might be trying to influence in so much as you're trying to get your message across because you know you can help them, but somehow it's not working, and that's one client, and you've got other clients, and we sometimes get to a stage where sales are not, the revenue coming in is not the way it should do. And I think as that stage, you start to question your product, your service, your skill set, etc. And it may not be any of that. It might be your awareness of the process you have. And in my experience, this is where a lot of business is lost, the process itself. So first thing is, who are you selling to? I'm sure Alex's Leadeth program helps people do that. Get in front of the audience that can best use your services. Who are the people you are most comfortable with? Who are the people your skill set, your program, your product serves best? So if you're selling vitamins, you might think you're selling to everybody, but the people you're really selling to are people that are that need to be healthier, but are at a stage where they're aware they need to be healthier and they're searching for a solution. We imagine that audience, but do they have the challenge we can help with? Is there timing at a stage where they want to deal with that challenge? You can only determine that by the questions you ask. And it's called qualification. You are trying to qualify that person to find out whether it's worth your time at this point to spend time helping them. There is no point if somebody's not in a position, not ready. So you need to be able to ask simple questions to find out. So in Ollie's situation, somebody comes to them with a website. The first question I want to is, why do you want a website? Do you already have a website? Because the questions then are, why do you need a new website? What's the urgency of the website? Oh, I'm going to start a business. When are you starting the business? What sort of business is it? I think I mentioned last week, I'm talking to a drone enthusiastic that's an imaging specialist. And the nature of his sort of business is he's working for the Ministry of Defense, helping the US and the British actually interpret images that a satellite is taking in enemy territory. What's the commercial value of that? What does he want to do? So I can't tell him. I can't put him in touch with a web developer until he knows what he wants to do with it. So you've got to be able to qualify that person. You've got to know, could they be a right fit? Excuse me. The next has to be that it's far easier to sell to people that want what you have than it is to try and sell people something they don't really need. And I think that's the other big shift. And here, things like Google ads are very valuable, because a Google ad that's well constructed I think is better than a Facebook. Ollie might disagree, and Alex might disagree. Because with Facebook, you're interrupting what somebody's doing, whereas with Google, you're actually meeting them where they're searching for something. They're searching for a solution to something. That's the advantage, I think, of a well-placed Google ad. They're looking for a solution to the problem. That's why we go on to Google. We want to find more about something. We don't go on Facebook to buy stuff. So it's a different psychology. It's a different approach. And maybe Alex and Ollie can make some comment about that. But it's far easier to sell to people who want what you have. That's why qualified referrals are very powerful. That's why B&I, in teaching people to do that and controlling that transaction, is very important. It's not just passing out or give somebody a name. It's a qualified introduction. That's why I think the figure when I was involved with them was about, if it's a qualified introduction, 64% of those will convert to a sale. Because the person that knows and trusts that person has already qualified them, they're already determined they've got a need, and therefore they're then able to put the right people together, and that trust factor is transferred. And that's why it's important to develop a referral partnerships. So in terms of qualification, we also need to know they are qualifying you. The buyer is qualifying you. They won't think of it like that, but they're assessing, is this person confident? Do they have the experience? Do they really understand where I'm at? Are they in any way sympathetic, empathetic, etc.? So there's that transaction. So how you qualify and how you have that conversation is very important. Anybody want to make any bass experience on that? I mean, sometimes you know when you're in front of somebody, it's just not gone right. Maybe you've talked too much and you've come away and you've not really asked any questions. Maybe you haven't addressed the subject of budget. Who was it mentioned about? I think it was Ollie mentioned about price. And actually a good question that I find is, what sort of budget do you have for this? Don't believe what they say, but what sort of budget do you have? You know, have you put a budget on that? Have you put a price on that? Ollie and then Jason.
Yes, because on your first point, just about Facebook and things like that, I think they both have their place. I think Facebook, it works really well for the kind of B2C kind of remarketing campaigns, things like that. So for more kind of products. Whereas I think, like, you're right, like SEO and Google Ads are really good because you can target those to exactly what the issue people are having, what they're after, and you can put your advert or your website or whatever right in front of people for that. And then, yeah, going to that, qualification of people. I've had a few meetings recently where I feel like there was no rapport, no connection at all. And then I don't hear from them. And then I hear from them in about a few weeks' time, and they're all kind of completely different and they want to go ahead. And so I think there's definitely felt like they were almost like an interview for me. They were interviewing me to see if I was right for them, as well as the other way around too. And yeah, also asking budget is something I've started to do a bit more. So if I'm unsure, you know, certain clients I can tell where to pitch it. But if I'm unsure with certain clients, then I will kind of, like, say, put in that kind of question, you know, do you have a budget in mind? Or I'll give them a kind of rough idea and then kind of ask, you know, does that fit within their budget, and sort of lead it from there.
All right. Jason.
Maybe just a note for you, Paul, perhaps would be a good topic for another session on what you were just saying about if the sale doesn't work, what's the follow-up process? So I've got a couple of friends that I chat to regularly that are both coaches online, and they have, you know, digital sales funnels. And if you have your primary end of the funnel conversation where you aim to sell, at the end of that, you haven't sold and the conversation's ended, you obviously analyze why not. Do you think that you potentially were at fault, or wasn't right just now for the client? But what's the follow-up process? So Ollie's just shared there, sometimes people can come back with, but I think that could be a good topic for another day, because it's
It could be a good topic for today because it's part of that sales process.
Right. Okay.
Because Ollie's sharing a frustration I've had recently with a couple of people, still got it in some cases. And you go through a stage and do I really want to deal with somebody that just doesn't get back? And you've got that choice. There has to be a fit. I used to be pretty successful getting people to B&I meetings because when I spoke to them, I would always say, I have no way of knowing whether there would be a good fit, and there needs to be a good fit, but we'll never know that, and until you visit. That's all I want you to do. And they would do. So I took the pressure away that there were, because they weren't being sold to. Because I've had cases where somebody wants to join, and the membership have refused it. Brad Burton, one of them, twice. But if you've had a good conversation, and I think that's why your sales conversation or your service conversation, I have no problem calling it sales, but that, call it buying if you want. You help people buy whatever it is you do. I think the conversation needs to be an intelligent conversation done without any distractions. So I never used to like dealing with somebody in their office where they've no control over phone calls coming in. It's a real interruption. It's the same if I'm talking to somebody on the phone and then another phone goes, and how people dash away to get that phone. They don't even know who it is. As far as I'm concerned, I've got an answer phone. The person in front of you that's most important. That conversation is important. What I like about the guy from Vodafone is he said, let's go for a coffee. And we took time to get to know, to be able to discuss uninterrupted. So at some stage, hopefully in the conversation, where there's the pushback, where where it's not going to go forward. Rod.
Yeah, I think you call that one love the one you're with.
That's a good Holly's number. That.
Love the one you're with. Always love the one you're with.
Wasn't Holly's, it was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Graham Nash was in the Hollies. So hopefully, if the conversation's a good conversation and you are finding out whether the discussion or the solutions you're coming to can fit in with what they're doing, if you know that their budget is within what you can help them with, or you know what you can do for that budget, you know where they are, you know where they want to get to. I think there's a number of things that we could do. Let's brainstorm some things you can ask. Where are we now on a scale of 1 to 10? And I think I've got one of Sandler's Why Salespeople Fail. Funnily enough, I've not used any of those from what they said, but there they have a very good way of finding out where they're up to. On a scale of 1 to 10, 0 being I don't want to work with you, and 10 being let's go ahead. Where would you be right now? And you've got to know how to say that. It doesn't need to sound trite, but if somebody says, I'm a 7, what would it take what do we need to do together to get you to a 10 or to get to a 10? What is it that would really stop you going ahead? When do you want to go ahead? If not, and even just saying, look, if this is not right now, I'd sooner know. So you've got to find your own way of deciding what the score is. Some salespeople talk about closing the sale. I prefer the term, let's collect a decision. Where are we now? It's just, what's happened. Let's just collect a decision. And the decision, timing is as big an influence on somebody's decision to buy as almost anything. It's not necessarily your skill, your ability to help. Timing is a key factor. Remember, we've always said 82% of sales take place after the 7th touch. And you don't know whether that sales conversation is touch number 2, number 3. Don't know their circumstances. Part of the job of the conversation is to find out where they're at. How urgent is it? What's the urgency? What's it going to cost to delay it? What other factors could delay somebody deciding to go ahead with the basement? That's where curiosity is going to come in. And if it is that I haven't got the funding until this date, then that's genuine. You need to know when to follow up. But either way, whatever, I always will leave is let's stay in touch. Let's stay in touch, because you never know when things might happen. As Ollie said, sometimes people come back at the strangest moments. That's why B&I people in the past have told me they've had business 2-3 years after something's happened, because that person's remembered them. Anne-Marie.
Talking about follow-ups, and I am definitely not the best at following up, but I do find that my little information pack that I have mentioned before is very, very effective, because what tends to happen is every single person that I have a one-to-one with that potentially is interested at some point will get one of these packs. And I would say, I don't know what the percentage is because I haven't looked, but a massive proportion of people that I send the packs to will always email me when they get it and say, oh, thank you ever so much, that was a lovely touch, really nice to speak to you, blah, 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 blah. And that immediately sets me apart in their mind from other people. So I do love my little information packs. The follow-up process then completely falls flat after that, but, but part of it works.
Well, I'm going to ask you, why does it fall apart? Why are you not following up? Why are you not curious as to whether they've received it?
I am curious,
So
but I don't have enough hands.
Well, you're sending a mail out. Is it by mail or by email?
No, post, because then
By
you get a
post,
lovely
by
little.
mail.
Did you have one, Tracy? Did I send you one? Oh, I'll have to send Tracy one now. Oh, yeah, no. So you get this lovely little squishy thing. It's blue or pink, depending on your preference. And then you get lots of little goodies inside it and a little piece of a thing with information about what I do and who I am and so on.
Part of your.
And I said, I deliberately did that because I love getting things in the post and nobody posts anything anymore apart from junk. And there's a card that I always write. The card that goes with it is always handwritten to whoever. Thank you for your interest.
I told you about one CRM the other day. You can tag all those people you've had a conversation with. When I bring somebody into one CRM, I've set it up, and I can help you do that if you're using it, to say they're tagged first 30 days. And so I can look at who I've spoken to in the last 30 days, and it forces me to say, what am I going to do next? So you could tag it that you've sent somebody something, and it will automatically then trigger another message to say follow up.
I do that. I use HubSpot. Everyone sits in HubSpot with lovely little tags and tasks and so on and so on. And my VA monitors them and tells me every day what I'm supposed to be doing. But sometimes if it's like, and this is something that I know I need to figure out. I need to put together some email templates that my VA can just send out to people like that. And I haven't done it. And that is the thing. It's kind of like, oh, okay, yes, I could do with sending them an email, but I need to think about what I'm going to say. And so I need to do this first because this is a deadline. And so it's all about time management. That's that part of it. I've got the tools. I've got the tools in place. I just haven't sorted my time management out properly yet.
Maybe the VA ought to say, VA, what do we do about this? You're paying them, get them to sort it out.
Yeah, but then, which I do, and he's brilliant, but he doesn't write an email like I want him to write an email, which is why I need to create templates.
Well, anyway, what I'm about to say though is why where people can get distracted for what they're doing and doing well, and that's that sales process. And it's the number of people you're taking through that sales process that's key. In other words, the number of people you speak to, and that's the only thing you've got any control over. The number of people you take through a sales process. You haven't got control over the decision. Ultimately, their decision is their decision. You can try and influence it. You can try and your best to make sure that they know you're the person to help them. But again, they've got the final decision. They hold the purse strings. So all you have got is the process itself. And that's why very often with salespeople, they look at targeting their results, the number of sales they're going to get. they'd be far better off. Once you're doing a consistent process, in other words, so if I speak to 10 people or I reach out to 10 people on LinkedIn, 4 people reply, of those 4 people, 2 people I'll have a conversation with, and every 2 people I get some business. Once you know whatever those figures are for you, all you've got to do is just keep, speed that up, because the stats become predictable, and that's what you've got control of. One of the challenges we all have as business owners that are working on our own is we start that and then we get overwhelmed and we stop feeding that process. We don't ask enough people. We don't reach out to enough people. We don't follow up with enough people. And anybody else will find that. If you suddenly, and we all at this stage and think, I could do with something, and something's not working, or we're not getting the revenue in, and that's when creative people go off and try something new instead of going back. Am I really getting enough people through that process? The sales, we've talked a little bit about process. If you think about the moment, I was talking to this guy that's got the Vodafone outlets, and he was telling me at Clark's Village, the footfall's down about 20%. In fact, I read something else that even during the Jubilee weekend, footfall into London was about 80% of what it was pre-lockdown on that same weekend. People are not coming back into the city centres, which is causing no end of problems for the cafes and the businesses that serve those workers. People are still a high percentage of people preferring to work from home, and it's going to have a nightmare situation. Having a nightmare situation in the high street because they can't get the staff. The service levels, in my view, are going down, and they're just not getting the footfall. And footfall has an impact on sales. If you're not getting, a person that's paying for a prime position is paying for footfall. They're paying for people passing that shop window. The shop window is enticing people in, and they're buying on impulse. And I suppose that's the way Facebook works. You are putting in front of people, you're interrupting them with something, a nice shiny thing, and that's where the sales. I'm not saying Facebook sales don't work. I'm just saying there's a difference in the approach. And it's fairly obvious that last weekend, the weekend before, there was a Jubilee weekend, and myself and Rod, we were very much involved in the, Rod more so than me, in the celebrations in the Cathedral Green, and all of the businesses in Wells had really a lot more business. Why? Because of the footfall. And if you're not getting the footfall, if you're not getting in front of the right enough people to select the right people, your sales will suffer as well. And the difficulty is you've got to do it, or you've got to have something that's doing it all the time. And I suppose that's where somebody like Alex, somebody like Ollie can influence that, because you're about getting eyeballs on that particular product or service. Could you add something to that, Alex, or Ollie?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at kind of that whole flywheel effect, which a lot of people talk about in marketing, where you've got that awareness section at the start, that stimulus, that emotional trigger, and then you've got the search, making sure people can be found, which is how Ollie's helping people, and you've got that research step where they're going onto Google and doing a bit of research before they actually commit to that purchase, and that purchase section is what we call the conversion stage. And then beyond the conversion stage, they're a raving fan, and that's where we have experience, and they're posting comments and feedback on how good the service has been, and that obviously influences the next customer's journey. So for me, I always think the smartest way to, and the easiest way and fastest way really to increase your marketing budget is to use your competitors. So the competitors have spent thousands on that awareness stage, that findability stage, and that reputation stage. But if you make your number one priority to improve your conversion stage, so all your competitors have got all these leads, they've spent fortunes to get these leads, but for whatever reason they're not converting. So if you can focus your energies on that conversion stage as a priority, you've just saved yourself loads of budget, which your competitor has paid for. So yeah, and I always think about the lifetime value of that client as well. That's quite important.
Yeah. How would you do that, for instance, with leaders?
Again, it's looking at what we call congregation points. So places where we're going to find those people that are kind of at that stage. So for us, it's I'm a big fan of LinkedIn groups, and it's finding those groups which are ripe with the right target market and target audience. And they're not quite gone with a competitor yet, but if you can wheel them in at that stage, you've saved yourself a lot of money in trying to initially find them.
And is that wheel them in with the value or the or solutions, ideas?
Yeah, so all that's going to help. It's just thinking about your competitors, having an eye on them, seeing what they're doing. How can you constantly improve? And it's that product development cycle. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We talk about what sales is, what it isn't. We talk about process. And if you're looking to serve somebody, you're looking to help somebody, if you're looking to take them on a journey, one of the biggest factors is your ability to communicate with them. So it'll be interesting how we think we communicate, because how we see ourselves is not necessarily how others see us. And whether that's to do with body language, whether that's to do with confidence, whether that's to do with posture, all of those things influence. I don't know the statistics, but I know that most, I should have looked those up. Sales is not what you say, it's more to do with the way you say it and other factors. So we think about a sales pitch and we think that's the bit that's going to influence people, but it's not. It's more things. How is this the person that's going to, how confident is somebody in you to be able to help them? Supposing that they are in a position to buy, they're going to be comparing you with somebody else that's offering a similar or an alternative solution. And what do we think are the most important things there? I mean, in your experience, what are the most important things? Confidence, I should say, is one of them. That's why I just led with that. They need to be confident, more confident with you than they are about the alternative. I think that's even more important than price, but confidence. How do we demonstrate confidence? How do we demonstrate lack of confidence? Ollie.
Yeah, I think through experience and results with previous kind of clients and things like that is probably for me the best way you can demonstrate kind of confidence is if you've got a longer period of longer time of experience, and if you've got good results with similar clients and things like that, and then that helps to kind of illustrate the confidence there.
So social proof and testimonials and somebody that you both mutually know. That's why the referral is very powerful itself, that recommendation. I think confidence, when we're not, let's try and get to the root of this. When we're looking to deal with somebody, what do we see in other people that gives us that feeling of confidence? Or how does that feel? What do we see? Rod?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is people judge you by what you do, not what you say. So if I say, oh, I can do this, I can put this event on, I'll put X thousand people outside, inside your shop, wherever it is, that's all a load of bollocks unless you can actually prove it or you've done it before. And so, and then if you can go to the next stage, because someone may not have seen that, if they can read about the fact that you achieved whatever it was you achieved, whether that's Google review or whether it's someone talking to someone else. I know my market traders were so pleased with their day on the Jubilee, for instance, they already want to book up for something I haven't even planned yet. So
Well, they're confident because you've done this so many times and you've served them and you've never let them down. But I'm thinking about somebody that you're meeting for the first time. No? Or just, are we confident with everybody we meet? What would make us hesitate over somebody? Well, let me lead this. I'm quite quiet in listening to somebody. So if somebody wants to start trying to sell me something, I'll listen. But if they're doing all the talking and they're not involving or asking me any questions, or I feel they're selling at me, I will switch off. I want somebody that is informed, but not to a point of doing all the talking. So the ability to listen is probably one of the most valuable things. The ability to ask questions is number one. The words we use are important as well, and the phraseology. And I can't give you any shortcuts to this, except that your conversation should deliver certainty. People want certainty, especially if they're going out of their comfort zone. If you're going to lead them from where they are to where they want to be, the more certain that they are that you will be able to confidently take them there, the better you'll have a chance of getting that business. And that certainty could come with the way in which you hold yourself. It could be the way in which you use terminology. So you've not got any hesitation. I don't mean that you're certain in terms of promising something that you can't possibly be certain about, as Rod has just said. But people expect people to lead them somewhere, especially in a sale. That's what we're talking about. So there need to be, the language you use is certainty. Is one of the pet hates I've got is where people use in words, don't forget. In fact, I was outside, where is it? There's a place called Flapjackery. And it says there, Father's Day, don't forget June the 19th. Don't forget flapjacks. And that's the worst bit of text that anybody could ever use, and everybody uses it because it's a double negative. Don't forget. And I've mentioned this before. That it'd be far better to use the word remember. If you change the words remember, and that it would then say Father's Day, June the 19th, remember the flapjacks. Isn't that more positive? So using phraseology and terms is important in that confidence route. Jason.
I'm just going to search for it now. There's a marketing guy in the States, and his catchphrase is remember the ice. So if you're in a bar, you order whiskey.
That's where I got from that. Sadly, he's died.
Oh, yes, right.
His name's Nichols, and in fact, he stayed with me when he came over. And
oh wow, okay.
I've got a number. By the way, I've got a number of his CD sets. If anybody still uses those, you're more than welcome. You just let me know you want them, and I'll post one out to you. But he would always, and this, has anybody else heard that story? You'll see it so many times. People use those words, don't forget. The story was that he was in Arizona on a very, very hot day. Well, it's always hot in Arizona. And he'd gone into this sort of 7-Eleven store. And when he came to check out, the guy behind the counter had a big sign and it says, don't forget the ice. And he was a language expert in the way we use language. And he said, how are ice sales? He said, well, actually, they're all right. Could be better. And he said, would you mind me doing something? Try something for me. And he took the sign down, turned it over, and with a felt tip, he wrote 3 words. And he stuck it back up. And about 2 weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, he was visiting that area again. He popped in, he said, how are ice sales? He said, I can't keep up. He said they've really shot up by so percentage. And what he'd written on there was, remember the ice. And he said, the challenge is that when you tell somebody not to do something, they do it because the subconscious mind remembers the word after the word don't. So if I say, don't think of an elephant in a pink tutu, what have you just thought of? I think there were other examples. Don't run with those scissors. On the end of emails, don't hesitate to call. And if you should really be telling people what you want them to do, not what you don't want them to do. And I see it all the time. I saw it. In fact, there was something, and I take slides of these. I really ought to do a post. I've got one here. Really interesting email I got there, and right in the middle it says, "Don't forget." All you need to say is remember. So the words we use. I'm trying to think of some more examples. The words we use when we're talking to clients are very, very important. And I can't think of any examples of that, Ollie, but I will when you talk.
I was just along that lines. I was thinking one of the things which I find with clients, and particularly, I mean, Alex might be the same, and Jason with Anne-Marie's probably very good at this, is there's a lot of kind of technical terms in kind of what I do, and trying to find a balance with clients of during the sales process of obviously wanting to demonstrate your knowledge and kind of expertise, but not kind of bamboozle them with kind of jargon and technical kind of terms. And yeah, I kind of do find that sometimes it can be a bit of a struggle to find that balance between the two. And I wonder whether, you know, any kind of guidance on that really.
Anne-Marie.
Yeah, for the initial, when you're initially connecting with somebody, promise that's water, not vodka. When you're initially connecting with somebody, you need to keep your language simple. It's the same whether you're working on a book or whether you're working on a piece of marketing material, because if I come to you and I say, right, Ollie, I need a website, and you say, right, I can do this dongle, that dongle, the other dongle, and whatever, I'm lost because I don't know what a dongle is. I don't know why I need one. It means nothing to me. So I'm like, all right, great, thanks very much. Now to you, you could be selling me the best thing ever. So actually, although you've got all of that technical knowledge, and I hear what you're saying, that you want to put it out there because you want to show your credibility, actually, for your very first point of contact, you need to keep it really simple and just use the language that people like me who aren't in your field will understand. The technical stuff can come later. That's just my opinion, and that's how I work with all of my authors. I've got a lot of authors who like to put loads of technical language in their books, and I say, that's brilliant, but who's your audience? And they say, oh, you know, Joe Blogs down the road. Well, great, he's not going to understand that, so it's you know, it's pointless. So your credibility doesn't just come from the words you use. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know if that helps or not.
Thank you.
I think so. And is anybody really interested in a dongle? It's what the dongle will produce. So it's not easy because we do.
It's the only thing I could think of. See, I'm not remotely technical at all. I just remembered that at some point we all had dongles, which is not a good thing to remember.
No, I'm not sure I should be handing over to Rod, but he has got his hand up.
Well, it's a simple expression called KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. I certainly think that in copywriting terms, and that is sales by word, I know that short sentences and spacing things out and using words that are not too long. I mean, I like discovering new words, but that doesn't mean to say everybody else does. So when it comes to this confidence bit, I think there's a number of elements as far as I'm concerned. If I'm going to see somebody, probably on Zoom or whatever, I'm aware of the way I dress. I know from a B&I environment this often came up, because we judge people, we make a judgment on what we see. So the way somebody dresses doesn't mean to say that somebody's got to have a suit on. They've got to feel comfortable in what they wear, but at least they've got to be smart. If they're slovenly or they're sat slovenly, they're not paying attention, haven't got their shoulders back or whatever. These are small points, but they're little points that can influence people. I think when people hesitate, I don't have a problem in saying I'm just not sure of the way forward here, but we could do this or we could do that. I think that's a little bit disarming. I'm quite deliberate in the way I phrase things, I suppose, and whether that's a manipulative way, I don't know, but I'm subconsciously aware of that connection. I think another confidence is having the balance between knowing what you're talking about and being humorous. Sometimes humor can be overplayed in a situation. And I think I'm just going back to this conversation I've had with the franchisee for the Vodafone. He picked up on my accent, and we're both from Manchester. He was from Ashton-under-Lyne, and we had a little bit of a conversation about my experience of Ashton-under-Lyne, searching warehouses for the Moors murderer victims. The fact that he was a City fan and I was a United fan didn't spoil the relationship. So looking for things in common, that will give people confidence. Eye contact is very important as far as I'm concerned. If somebody's at a networking event or somebody that you're talking to, you want to be paying attention to them. You want to be looking at them because you're trying to read their situation as well. And I think we've all had it where we've been to a networking event and you're talking to somebody and they're looking over your shoulder or suddenly having conversations with other people. It disturbs. So these little body language things are quite important because people are reading that and deciding whether you've got that confidence. But I think the overriding nature is your understanding, real understanding of where they are, what their circumstances are, where they want to be, and what's been stopping them, and getting to the root of those, and then letting them know that it's their perception. They need to know that you're the person to take them there. And I think that's about sales wrapped up, unless somebody else has got some other thoughts. So Tracy, you said you weren't, and come back to Jason in a sec, you said you weren't, you didn't always feel comfortable. Did any of that make you more comfortable or whatever?
Yeah, I think there's some things I need to work on in terms of what I'm selling, so I think that's the first bit. But I think what was really helpful this morning was that whole conversation about the use of language in terms of the phraseology, but also the way in which we come across, because I think there is something in our accents, the way we come across. Sometimes, I know I can come across being very nice, so therefore people sometimes think you don't know anything. So I'm very conscious of that, and I think that is something that I really need to give some more consideration to.
You don't mean to say you're going to switch from being nice to being not nice?
Well, you say that, but I think I think there is something in that, because when I was in the corporate world, I was much more direct and much more forceful in things, which I think was a good thing. But in this kind of world where you're trying to get to know, like, and trust people, it's really different, because you tend to not challenge quite so much in the kind of initial meetings. But for me, some of that challenge is what I'm about, especially,
Well, therefore you've got to be authentic, and I think that being nice is an interesting one, because we want to be liked, and many salespeople that want to be liked don't end up being successful. You want to be respected.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm a nice person. I got very easy with people, but anybody that really knows me, my best friend used to call me the commander. I was his area manager at one stage because I know what I want, and I'll say it quite direct. That's my northern background, maybe. But I don't think we serve anybody too well if we don't say what we really think. And they don't have to agree with it. The relationship you should be having should be one in which you are quite prepared to say, well, actually, no, you are right. Sales is not, I'm going to prove you right and you wrong. It's got to be a win-win. People have got to feel comfortable that they can have a conversation, because if they knew the answers, they wouldn't need to be talking to you. So, but how you phrase that, you know, I don't know whether this sits well with you, but what I found is that doing it this way could result in this. Doing it this way will always result in that. So using the word could, using the word, you know, will, having that phraseology, being quite, they're not going to pay you just to be nice. They're going to pay you for your background experience.
Yeah.
Rod. Yeah, I always think, you know, a good business deal is where everybody that goes to the party leaves with a balloon. Think about it.
I like that expression. You know, people have got to come away. And sometimes the sale is not there. Sometimes you may, I don't know, you wouldn't, I think there's a psychology in, you've heard the expression takeaway. That's where you actually take the sale away, where you say, you know, I'm not sure this will work. Could be around prices. It certainly won't work on these prices. I think what you want and what I want from this relationship, I think there's got to be a good fit. I'm not sure there's going to be a fit here. And sometimes it's better to do that yourself, to hold your own posture and your future confidence. If that relationship is not there, if you don't feel comfortable, if you think, if your perception, your qualification of that person is unreliable, they're not to be trusted, etc., when you've given them the full chance, best to walk away. Anne-Marie.
In the good old days, when we used to be non-computery people and we had telephones, we used to do a lot. I know we have phones now, but you know what I mean. We used to do a lot of, when I was training, we used to do a lot of the role play things. Obviously, you've got someone on the end of the phone to your customer, etc., etc. And I personally learn by doing more than I do by reading or being told. And I'm just wondering if a future session, whether it's beneficial to do some kind of, you know, just a basic role play. So Tracy's identified that, you know, this is an area that she feels concerned about. So we could literally just role play that. I don't know whether that's something that anyone else thinks would be beneficial or not, but I certainly always remember the endless hours I've spent going, yes, hello, Mr. So-and-so, how can I help? Yeah, because it was painful, but it worked.
I think that I'm trying to think where it would work here. Could work on some breakout sessions. I don't know how somebody comes across, if people are honest enough. I think that's.
It was just a thought, you know.
It's important to get feedback. I know that I became a far better salesperson when I became an area manager, watching somebody else. Because when you're in the heat of the moment, you know, you can't always see what's happening because somebody's saying something, and sometimes they'll say something and you've got a point and then you interrupt them. And so I can do that. I think we all can. So I tend to, if somebody says something, I'll make a note there and then come back to it. I think that's why it's also a good idea when you're in that conversation with somebody, just to say, do you mind if I take notes? So that you
I think it's useful. Sorry, Paul, I think it's useful as well for overcoming challenges, because if you are being challenged by someone that you know is a friend, not a foe, in a safe environment, I genuinely feel that that arms you for when you're being challenged by somebody that you don't know, and that you're trying to woo, so the overcoming of objections and that kind of thing. I'm only saying this because I've been through tons of them, but I don't know, as I say, it was just an idea.
Yeah, again, I think that certainly could be a good idea. Whether we do it in a mass group or big group, or whether we do it in small groups, maybe in threes, that could be good. Somebody observing, make a note of that. Right.
There's real value in the case study idea. So there's a lot of learning to be got from taking one person's, the whole process we've touched on before. Is there's the marketing funnel and everything that goes to the point of being ready to discuss a sale.
Yeah.
Before we run out of time, just because I know I'll forget the idea, Anne-Marie, maybe something to put in some of your, if you're struggling for content for emails to send to people that you've chatted to in the past who have never bought, I would have thought the two things to do is anytime you do get a client that publishes a book, do a little case study around that and send it out to everybody that's you've spoken to. And in the absence of having anybody current, walk around your local bookshop and do some commentary on book covers in the different topics, and that'd be a very relevant, as you know, the cover makes, particularly in shelves, can make a really big part of it. So I thought that's just a really easy way to give yourself fresh content ideas, and that by keeping in contact with the people who are still on the fence about doing a book, it might bring them forward to actually realise that they can do it.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you. I have been setting up my monthly newsletter for 18 months. So yes, it will happen at some point. But no, that's great. Thanks ever so much. I appreciate that.
If we can go around now and just see, as we close, is there anything in particular you've got from this session, or anything else you'd like to go further? One of the things that I was intending to do, and our two photographers are not on today, is about visual aids, what visual aids we can use to enhance the sale and when we'd use them. And I thought we'd do that over the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to speak to them separately, because I think what visual aids can you use, and where does photographs, visual images come in that sales process in demonstrating. And I'm happy next week to talk about the power of video in that respect. But if I can get them to prepare it in advance, all three of us can do that. Alex, just get some feedback from you out of today, and how you'd like to see this conversation. What do you think we've missed? What could we include? Certainly, the sales process on LinkedIn would be a good one, and we'd love to get you back to talk about that.
Yeah, certainly. No, it's been great to meet everyone, and I hope it's been been really helpful just to kind of look at those little nuances of sales, because you do forget about them if you don't practice them every day. You kind of get into autopilot, bad habits creep in. So it's been really helpful. There's been some good takeaways. Yeah.
Well, I hope it's helped people that have a concern about sales. But the rest, if you are comfortable, it's all down to that sales pipeline. It's having that process of bringing enough people, of the right people through, because the more you do that, the stats will tell you you'll do more business and you'll become more skillful. Jason.
There's so much, but you've reminded me of something I read just this week by one of the telesales guys that I follow. He said exactly the same thing. Too many people are more focused on trying to build out a perfect process and automate everything rather than actually just get on the phone or do more numbers. And that's a key takeaway. This is all great content. It's all relevant, but actually nothing can beat numbers. And the more numbers you do, the more you can refine what your process is anyway.
Yeah, and enjoy yourself while you're doing it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Ollie.
Really good session. I think for me, the thing I got was, I find with my kind of SEO clients and ads clients, I tend to do a bit more of the fact finding about where they want to go, but don't tend to do that so much with my web clients. It tends to be quite short, the kind of period we spend of time on kind of asking them what they want to achieve from their website. So yeah, this kind of sales process today is looking at it has made me kind of remember that, and maybe to kind of find out a bit more, when with the web stuff, where they are now and where they want to go and how their website can take them there. So yeah, I found that really helpful. So yeah, thank you.
I think the question, how are things and where are you headed? I think that's a good one. How do you see the next 12 months panning out? They're questions. But as long as you listen to the answer and listen deep enough. Anne-Marie.
Yeah, loads. As an aside, my tea drinking video on LinkedIn was a surprise hit, which was the most random thing I've ever posted, but there we go. So yeah, the thing that Alex said about focusing on the conversion stage where your competitors have already done all the work, I thought was really, really useful. And what you were saying, Paul, about replacing don't, because I use don't, because I think it was probably instilled in me when I started work that you always put, please don't hesitate to contact us. It was like a sign off that you always used. And I'd never given it any thought until today. So now I'm going to rephrase that and say, you know, remember, you can contact us, but whatever. So thank you. It's been great.
Wherever you notice how many times you see it, and then just visually you substitute the word, and it becomes far more powerful. You're telling people what you want them to do instead of what you don't want them to do. Rod.
I think this whole session took me back to the days with the Prue, knocking on all the doors that we did call on, and then streaming forward to Piccadilly Radio and opportunity knocks. If you drive around in a vehicle that's liveried up Piccadilly Radio, you know. So yeah, it's interesting that the whole sales process, it's not just about you, even though you're involved in it, you're only a part of it. And being a conscious and aware of the other parts that make the whole process whole, if you like, it's so important. A lot of things have come out this morning that helps with that process.
Good. Thank you. And finally, Tracy.
I think, as I said about language, but one of the things that I thought was useful from last week as well as this week is when I went onto my networking group, and you know, you've got to do your 40 seconds. Well, that week I didn't want to do it because I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to pitch myself. So I decided not to and just say something different. And so I think it is about, with all the stuff that we're always doing, and kind of that's what I'm getting from the marketing crew and stuff, is just coming up and saying what you want to say and how you want to say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And seeing what reaction you get and learning from it.
I think the most useful thing I found is when you're going to meet somebody, do you want the business? Therefore, do you have an agenda? Are you trying to manipulate, or are you genuinely interested to find out whether you're in a position to help this person and how you can help them? And I think the empathy and the curiosity, leaving your agenda to one side, because when the conversation is evident that you're the person to help them, you'll get that business if it's there to be got at that time. So hopefully we try to put all of those into perspective. I'm going to send these notes that I had to begin with a couple of reference to a couple of other documents that you might find useful, but that'll help you condense that and just say, how much of this am I doing? Okay, nice to see everybody. I'll see you all next week. I've got a trip up to Manchester in the meantime, and I think I'm meeting Rod later, and I believe Ollie's coming over to Wells because he did an interview. Sorry, he did a presentation to the men's breakfast on Saturday, which I videoed. I've now edited, and I've got 37 minutes of telling you about a day in the life of a funeral director. The next question is, how do we use this? How do we chop it up into bits that'll help Rod's business?
I was definitely in front of my target audience, wasn't I, Paul?
Yeah. There's a few that had to be helped from their chair.